Well, I used to dream out loud. Just being human made me proud. Now I throw my hands up in the air from disillusion and despair. My heart has taken such abuse. I've used my hurt as my excuse. It's like my hope has disappeared behind the shadow of my fear. And I wonder why they say that aging thins the skin. Then I remember I am only one, but I am not alone. I don't need to do everything, no. I can right one wrong, I can sing one song. I don't need to do everything. It's time to dive back in, yeah. It's time to live again. I am unjaded. What if you have to fall to grow? I've fallen hard enough to know. So what if life's not fair? Does it mean that I'm too cool to care? And I wonder when I stopped believing right will win. Then I remember I am only one, but I am not alone. I don't need to do everything, no. I can right one wrong, I can sing one song. I don't need to do everything. It's time to dive back in, yeah. It's time to live again, unjaded. What kind of life would I live with my heart closed? What kind of man would I be? What kind of world will I be creating if I can love with all of me? If I just love with all of me. I am only one, but I am not alone. I don't need to do everything on my own. I can right one wrong, I can sing one song. I don't need to do everything. I am only one, but I am not alone. I don't need to do everything, no. I can right one wrong or sing one song. I don't need to do everything. It's time to dive back in, yeah. It's time to dive back in. Oh, it's time to live again. I am unjaded. Unjaded. Oh, thanks. So there's a classic moment in recorded music history in America, anyway, that I wanted to talk about today. And believe me when I tell you, if I bet everyone $1,000, I'd come home with everybody's money, because you wouldn't expect me to talk about the first 5 seconds of Whitney Houston singing "I Will Always Love You," but I'm only going to briefly talk about that. But there is a point to be made about it that I find interesting technologically, because I'm a musician and I record music for a living and I produce people's records, and that's like what I do. But I also find it interesting as a person. And I've given, some of you have heard me talk a little bit about my background, but in case you think I was born and raised a hippie who sings inspirational songs, no, I was raised to be a cynic and a smartass, and probably a lawyer. If my parents could have been lords of the universe. They were, my parents are both attorneys. My dad, a law professor for 45 years. My mom, an attorney at banks for 25 years. And we were raised to be good boys and nice boys, 3 brothers, I'm the middle. And we were raised to to go into some professional field, preferably law, preferably by getting a law degree at my dad's law school, where, believe it or not, we had free tuition that 2 of the 3 brothers were stupid enough to pass up on. And we were raised to be thinkers, not feelers, hard studiers, cerebral people, which is one of the major reasons why I'm pretty sure I arrived on a UFO and was dropped into the Nahmod family at some point, because of how, I know I'm the only person who's saying this in this group who would say this, but I am truly weird in my family. I mean, an absolute outlier. The only lefty, I'm the only one who's gonna cry at a sad movie or have a sentimental moment. It's just not a sentimental family. It just isn't. Good family, nice people. Not a sweet, huggy kind of place. And I was certainly not raised to write songs. So that's just a preface to what I'm about to say, because if you have cynical or defensive thoughts about anything I'm about to say, then congratulations, and so do I. So here's the story. The story is in the first 5 seconds of Whitney Houston singing "I Will Always Love You," right? One of the most successful pop song recordings ever made. Dolly Parton wrote the song. If you probably knew that, but if you didn't, yes, Dolly Parton wrote it and recorded it years earlier. David Foster presented it to Whitney. David Foster, the producer, presented it to Whitney Houston to sing on the soundtrack of, I believe it's The Bodyguard, right, with Kevin Costner. And it became one of the 2 or 3 biggest pop songs ever released at the time. The opening line is Whitney Houston singing alone, right? If I should stay. And it is, it's a masterpiece of pop singing. She was a genius, full-on, genius at singing. And it's obvious from the get-go. And her voice is very present and warm in those first few seconds. And as you know, if you've heard it, which I don't know how you couldn't have, by the end of it, you have that big drum hit in the silence, followed by a very, very large, long, majestic, finale from Whitney's voice. And being, as she was, one of the most gifted pop singers in the world, and who had lungs and volume to spare, that was probably a hell of a note to hear her sing in person. In fact, it's something that I think about every so often. I think, what would it have been like, certain performances. And that performance, right, to hear her doing, would have been something special. Anyway, so here's the trick. The trick is, you've heard it on the radio, and the song comes on, and you know exactly what song it is. You hear those opening notes, a cappella, and 3 minutes later, you're weeping, and you're listening to the last 30 seconds, and it's Whitney Houston and an orchestra and a band, and it has gone from quiet to loud. Or has it? You see, that's the trick. If you listen to that song on the radio, you actually at no point need to touch the volume knob. You don't need to turn it up when she starts, and you don't need to turn it down when she's finishing. That is because of a gadget in the music recording world, and live sound too, but especially in studios, called a compressor. All right, here's what a compressor does. I gotta put my guitar down to explain. A compressor in the music world is a device that is triggered to drop my guitar, is what it's gonna do. No, that's not holding a guitar. It's a stand in name only. I'm not sure what it's doing. Stay. Okay, anyway. So kind of like a floating straw or a boat that sinks. It only has one job. Anyway. So a compressor is a gadget that's listening to a signal, listening to a sound. It is triggered by a certain level of volume. When a certain high volume arrives in the wire, in the compressor box, it's a little machine, arrives in the compressor does this. It's got its hand on the volume knob, and it does this, whoa, and it turns it down, which I have actually experienced many times live with sound people who panic when they realize what I'm about to do to the audience. Anyway, that's another story. So I've seen compressors in person, and so have you, people with their hands on the knob in a slow, low, steady state of panic, making sure nobody's ears bleed and the speakers don't blow out. That's what a compressor does. It grabs the loudest sound and drops the volume. Everything about it is manipulable. How fast it grabs it, how long it keeps the knob down, how loud it has to get for it to trigger. All those things are settable, but the concept is it takes peaks and squishes them down. Now there's a secondary benefit in some sense of that function of a compressor. You see, if Dave wants you to hear me loud when I'm playing something very quiet, he can turn up the volume. The only problem is, you and I both know I'm not staying quiet. And then the loud sections are going to distort and cause your speakers to sound terrible and cause it to just be unpleasant at best and painful at worst, right? So, but once you've dropped the peaks of the volume, you can now safely raise the entire thing up. The quiet sections no longer need to be so quiet if you know that no matter how loud I sing at you, the volume will be moderated, right? Now, in theory, I mean, that sounds like a convenient thing. I can hear more clearly, I won't break my speakers, I won't break my ears. The trick comes when you overuse a compressor, which, as with everything clever humans have ever invented, they started to do. Overuse of a compressor means nothing loud gets louder, and nothing soft manages to get softer. Because once you've squished every peak down to a essentially flat surface, a plateau, where it's all safe to listen to at any volume, what do people do then to their CDs and their radio singles? They do their best to make them as loud as possible, because loud has a spinal impact on us of feeling more exciting. So recording artists and engineers learned early on, if we can make it louder, they're less likely to change the station when it comes on. So what did they do? They didn't just squash all the highs. They started raising all the lows so that the overall volume keeps getting higher. In order to keep raising it, which they did for about a decade, I believe it was in the 90s, they called it the loudness war. And it was a battle between engineers, between people making albums, to see how loud they could make an album, honest to God. And in doing that, they actually violated the laws of nature. Imagine listening to, if you know Nessun Dorma, Luciano Pavarotti sings it, spectacular piece of music. Imagine any classical piece of music you've ever heard. There's always, in a symphony, you'd say, there's three movements, right? There's kind of moderate introduction of the themes, there's a quiet middle, and then there's an intense ending. Imagine if, no matter what the orchestra was playing, it was all at exactly the same volume. Imagine if somebody who was mad at you spoke in exactly the same volume as somebody who was whispering sweet nothings in your ear. That's how unnatural it is. And it was done to music for like a solid decade. We call it in music dynamics, loud and soft passages. All the dynamics were squished out of recorded music. And as a result, there's an entire, honest to God, an entire generation of recorded music that is utterly lifeless to listen to. And it went by us. We didn't notice. I didn't know what a compressor was. You didn't notice. All you knew was you didn't feel much. It sounded good, and it sounded loud, very present. But it didn't have the range of emotions that art is meant to have. It couldn't, because it was squashed out. All the lows were raised and all the highs were suppressed. Okay? Now, this concept of a compressor, to me, is a very pregnant idea in life. So I just sang you a song, about, well, all my songs are really about feelings. Have you ever had your heart broken? Have you ever wanted something really badly and didn't get it? Have you ever wanted someone really badly and they said no? Have you ever gone to the doctor looking for a clean bill of health and were given a diagnosis that scared the crap out of you? Right? These would be, I think most people would say, these are low moments in someone's life, right? Disappointments, broken bones, broken hearts, letdowns, regrets. These are low points. We've all got them. It's the stuff of life. And one of the most consistent patterns, I think, literally in the world of biology, in the entire planet of life, one of the most consistent things, well, life wants to live, right? It's a simple statement and it's a true statement. Life wants to live. So what do we do when we've been hurt? If we're lucky, our wound closes up, right? The blood clots, the wound closes, and it heals. Might leave a scar, might not. But what happens the next time you pick up the same knife? You flinch a little. You're a little extra careful. What happens the second time you ask a stranger out on a date when the first one laughed in your face? I'm not saying I can relate to that story. I'm just saying, in theory, let's say you ask somebody out and they say, or like in Four Weddings and a Funeral, you know, a guy's been pining for this woman and he asks, you could marry me? And she says, oh, Bernard, I'm not that desperate, you know. So what do you do the next time you ask somebody out? You're a little more guarded, maybe, a little less open, a little less vulnerable, maybe a little less romantic with the appeal, because you know it can hurt. You know it doesn't always go well, right? You cover up. I once heard a minister say, if you walk through a field and you get bitten by a snake in the field, you don't blame the snake, but you don't walk through the field again, right? So we're in an ongoing data collection business, I think, among many other things that we do. We gather information about what hurts, about what disappoints, right? You see it in someone's face when you're, I just did this recently, actually. We have family friends, and I've wanted for years, I've had the idea that my family, my wife and son and I, could take a trip with their family. And I floated the idea recently, and he was clearly not interested. And I was embarrassed, right? And I was a little uncomfortable asking. I mean, you know, I'm sure you can all relate one way or another. I was a little uncomfortable floating the idea. I thought that he was up for it. And he, well, yeah. And I'm like, oh, no, that's a no, you know. And I've heard no's enough times to know a no when I hear it, even if the word no never came out of his mouth. So, you know, we build a thicker skin. That's why I sing Unjaded. We build a thicker skin over time. We start to defend against future injury, right? Every living thing does. If you've ever had the heartbreaking experience of getting to know a dog that's been abused, you reach to pet it and it flinches away. And it's the saddest thing in the world. Well, it's incredibly sad, and it's not just dogs that do it, right? I mean, I had some of you may know Faith Rivera. She's a singer-songwriter and a mother and a wife, and really one of the loveliest people I know. I haven't seen her since she moved to Hawaii, so it's been like 2 or 3 years, and she knows this story, so it's not like I'm divulging anything, you know, it's a true story. It's personal, but it's real. And I knew Faith for like 10 or 15 years. She was at gigs sometimes with me. You know, I just saw her. We crossed paths. And this woman, was so kind, always. Friendly, smiling, encouraging. She always had a big idea. She was always willing to share whatever idea she had. It was always just yeah, we should totally, let's write music for TV. I've got this program I'm doing. It was always encouraging, always inclusive, always friendly, always supportive. It took, and I told her, 15 years for her to get past my defenses. One day, literally, we're at a conference, and she's being that way again, And it suddenly occurs to me, I have never seen her be any other way. I have no grounds for cynicism here. Is it possible that this person is actually that unselfish, that kind, that supportive, that positive, that encouraging, that sweet? Maybe I should cut her some slack after 15 years and give it a chance. And it is literally, like I said, you can't out-cynic me on this. I mean, it took that long for me to allow whatever programming I received, that, like I said, the cerebral side versus the feeling side. I mean, I very much remember my parents telling me the only people you can really trust is your family. I remember that. I'm not saying it's an evil thing to tell your kids. It's just that was the programming. And it took 15 years before one day I told Faith, I'm sorry. I haven't believed you until now. She's like, what are you talking about? And I told her what I just told you. I mean, maybe some of you can relate to this sort of thing. It takes a while for me to get there. It does. So those are the low moments, the hurt moments, the regret moments, are the moments that we wish we hadn't fallen, hadn't tripped, hadn't asked out, hadn't gotten sick, whatever. We wish we hadn't, right? And we do our best to prevent it from happening again. Now, on the flip side, you have the highs. The highs are, well, go ahead and take a second. Think of one of the highest points, the greatest moments of your life. I just thought of the moment where I took my mom to see the Grand Canyon. I happened to be in New Mexico, and I didn't have a wife, I didn't have a kid, I was roaming, and I said, Mom, I'm going to be in New Mexico. I don't think you've ever seen the Grand Canyon. And she said, you're right, I haven't. I said, if you come to New Mexico, let's go to the Grand Canyon for a day. And she flew out, and we drove up to the south rim of the Grand Canyon. And the Grand Canyon is one of those things, if you've never seen it, it's one of those things that's not overrated. It is beyond dazzling, beyond a photograph, beyond a poem, beyond a painting. It doesn't make sense when you're standing there. And I still remember we walked up with my mom, and I could cry just thinking about it again. I walked up with my mom, and we stood there looking at that place, and she said, if my mom could have only seen this, she wouldn't believe it. And that was, for me, one of the finest moments of my life, that I had given her an experience like that had reminded her of her mom, her mom, first-generation immigrant, Holocaust survivors, had never gotten on an airplane. My grandmother, my bubby, her mom never drove a car. They didn't go around the United States to see it. They heard stories, they watched TV, and there was my mom standing on the south rim of the Grand Canyon, achieving what I can only guess was one of her mom's dreams that she never achieved. And it was so emotional for me. By the way, don't get me wrong, my mom doesn't remember it being emotional for her. I remember it being emotional for me. But I'm saying, like, whatever high point you thought of, right? I'm gonna guess that it was a moment of particular openness for you. Your eyes were open, your heart was open, you were ready, you were available. Let me put it another way. The moment that you thought of, whether it was the birth of your child or your wedding day or a vacation moment or a moment with one of your parents like I just described, or a moment of great triumph, you won an award, you won a prize, you got a job, you graduated college, whatever it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but most likely that moment had a possible flip side of deep disappointment or hurt that could have happened instead. That was a moment of real vulnerability. All bets were off in that moment. I took my mom there. We could have been snowed or rained in, or she could have said something cynical or sarcastic. She could have broken my heart at that moment, and instead she filled it up. Does that make sense? It was that powerful because I was that available. I am always astonished by Olympic athletes who train from the time they're 5. They pass up boyfriends and girlfriends. They pass up prom. They pass up parties to train so that one day, 1 minute, 10 seconds, 1 landing on the balance beam, 1 jump on the skis, it all happens to make the greatest moment they could ever imagine, or they fall. And it's a regret and a heartbreak for the rest of their lives. That's laying it on the line. That's life without a compressor. That's daring to be filled or emptied completely by an experience. I would never advocate, and I'd be the biggest hypocrite in the world if I did, never advocate being that available 24 hours a day. Jesus, I go out of my mind. I'm vulnerable and sensitive enough. I don't know about you. I get my feelings hurt 50 times a day. Somebody looks at me funny, or somebody doesn't call me back. I don't know about you. I mean, right? It's just life is constantly sweet Barb, sweet, ouch, sweet, oh, sweet, oh, just absolutely. But at that scale, turning off the compressor and daring yourself to win a medal, for all your training to come together in one moment, daring yourself to ask somebody to marry you. I've always thought it was a funny moment. You ask them to marry you, it's going to go one of 2 directions. Either you're going to spend your rest of your life with that person, or you're never going to see them again. It's a pretty tough moment, in its own way. It's a really gutsy moment. If you've ever proposed to anybody, if you are a man or woman, or if you propose to a man or woman, it's a gutsy, scary moment for a reason. Because it's really laying it on the line. So the question on the table, and I can't answer it for anybody except myself, is, do you prefer the roller coaster or the merry-go-round? Do you want a compressor on? Do you want it set to high? Maybe you do. Maybe you've had enough. To be honest, my Bubby and Zadie, the grandparents I just talked about, after the Holocaust, they made it to the United States. They raised 3 kids the best they could. Their kids never went hungry. They died in their old age. They made it to America. But their compressors were set to high for the rest of their lives. These were not people who laughed giddily and had fun parties. Life, they had been broken on the inside so deeply that for them to make it through life and raise their kids was enough. They didn't toast champagne. They didn't take vacations. So maybe that in other words, I can't judge that. Maybe that's where you land on the scale. Maybe that's how much bandwidth of happy and sad you feel like you can manage. But if you're wondering, and this is talking to myself as much as to you, if you're wondering, whatever happened to the giddy me? Whatever happened to the girl that giggled? I vaguely remember how much fun I had skiing. I used to kiss my husband, whatever it is. I mean, these things that used to, right, that used to make the hair stand up on your arms, these things that used to make you excited, I'm not, sexually or otherwise. I mean, these things that used to really stir your juices. The things that were a little scary, the things that were a little or more than a little vulnerable. If you're wondering where the highs went, I'd suggest to also wonder where the lows went, because they probably go hand in hand. My business of writing songs and performing, I am in an unending siege of not knowing. It's relentless darkness in which I am working. For other entrepreneurs too. I write a song, it might suck, it might be good, and then I sing it for nice people who are usually too nice to tell me it's not good, and then I make a record if I can or if I feel like it, and then I try to sell it and they buy it or they don't, and on, and round for 20 plus years. I don't want my skin to get thick. My songs depend on vulnerability. In fact, I know I'm out of time. I've got to be out of time. So I'm going to sing you something else. I can't write the songs I write without being vulnerable. But I can honestly tell you that I wish my heart didn't slam so closed as soon as I was done. When I'm singing them, I feel them. In fact, I feel them so much and mean them so much and dive so deep into a song when I'm singing it for you, this is the honest truth, that I cannot watch a video of myself do it because I do not want to know what my facial expression is doing, what my mouth, I could not handle being self-conscious during this thing I do. But as soon as I hang up with you, I'm chubby, I'm short, I'm tired, I made $5 instead of 10. You know, is my wife in a good mood or not? You know what I'm saying? It just all comes right back in. Vulnerability is the stuff of my job. And I don't know if you've also noticed this, but if good living, and this is a judgment you may disagree with, if deep living, if the best hug comes from hugging someone who you are fully vulnerable to, right? If the best moment, the birth of your child, comes when you are cracked wide open, I think it's fair to say that the last 2 years have been severely damaging to all of humanity's capacity to feel the extremes. It has been a compressor turned to nuclear, such that we are all programmed now, to one extent or another, to feel like the words social distance are a good thing. In what universe is social distance a solution to a problem? You guys go to a Unity church, attend, online or in person. We know the power of a hug, and we know the power of an act of kindness, and we know the power of vulnerability. We are a little ahead of the game than a plant that shies away from the shade and towards the sun. We can make various conscious choices. We can decide to take a chance on being vulnerable. We can expose ourselves to the hurt, the possibility of it anyway, intentionally, in order consciously to open ourselves up to the good, to the extreme joy, extreme pleasure, extreme satisfaction. If the Olympics had nothing on the downside, there would be nothing on the upside. It's a scary proposition to live that vulnerable. It is scary. And as I said, I fail more often than I succeed. But I can tell when I'm in that zone. I can tell. I cry easier, I laugh louder, I write a better song. My wife is happier, my son is happier. We are more connected as a family. I make somebody's day legitimately better when I'm open to them. Instead of saying, hey, I say, how are you? And I actually make eye contact. That's vulnerable because you and I both know most of the time they're not going to make eye contact back, right? Building bridges, making connections, acting with kindness, acting with unsolicited generosity. These are things that open us up to ridicule, to being taken advantage of, to being exploited, to feeling foolish. That's a vulnerability we can opt into. The payoff is the spectacular feeling of being completely alive, of really loving. That song, Unjaded. What kind of life would I live with my heart closed? It's the choice each of us makes on a daily basis. A daily basis. You and I, when we're done with this little chit-chat, you and I have a choice. I have a choice when I get in the car if I call a friend to be truly available or to just be casual or to not call at all. I have that choice. If you're sitting next to somebody, you have that choice to really look them in the eye, to really squeeze a hand, to make a piece of toast, or choose a film that you know will cause you to cuddle. These are choices we make. Or we can stare at a screen that's distracting, stay insulated, stay jaded. And again, I can't judge that choice. We've all been through things. And by the way, the choice can change minute to minute or day to day. I just know that when I flip off the compressor, that's when I sing my best and I live my best. It's just true. And the downside is worth the price and worth the risk. Am I nervous? Of course I am. You don't even have to ask. Facing a mystery, anyone would be. One more step and it's out of my hands. There can be no turning back. Can't say what's in front of me, but you know I can't wait to see. This is something I owe to myself. This is something I've just gotta do. I don't know what I'll find, but there's one thing I know about my life. It's gotta be, yeah, it's just gotta be true. I remember, of course I do, how I used to hear my heart, what I most long to be, what I most want to see. But that voice has faded so far away. I hardly recognize myself. What happened to me? No wonder I couldn't breathe. This is something I owe to myself. This is something I've just gotta do. I don't know what I'll find, but there's one thing I know about my life. It's gotta be, it's just gotta be true. It's been a lifelong habit, gave away my power, playing follow the leader again and again. But my soul won't have it, I won't hide or cower. I'm ready to dive back in. This is something I owe to myself. This is something I've just gotta do. I don't care what I find. No, there's one thing I know about my life. It's gotta be, it's just gotta be true. Yeah. It's gotta be true. It's gotta be true. There you go.
Daniel, thank you for your talk. Thank you for your music. I have a request. This wasn't my request that I had in mind earlier, but
Okay.
your talk reminds me of Get Ready My Soul. And I'm wondering if you might sing that for us.
Sure. Want to do that right now?
Yeah.
Got it. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest everything I've lost or won, everything I've ever dreamed has brought me here to the present moment, here to a new beginning, here, and I'm seeing life so clearly now. Get ready, my soul. Sing with me. I'm diving in. I'm diving in. Get ready. Get ready, my soul. Diving in. I'm diving into the deepest kind of love. To the deepest kind of love. The sweetest kind of life. To the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, my soul. 'Cause here I go, deeper, deeper, deeper than I've ever been before. Here I go, closer, closer, closer to my sacred source. Here I go, deeper, deeper, deeper than I've ever been before. Here I go, closer, closer, closer to my sacred source. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving into the deepest kind of love, to the deepest kind of love, the sweetest kind of life, to the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, my soul. Get ready, my soul. There you go. Ran away from the sun, ran away from the rain, hid away from everyone, ran away from the pain. Now I'm so out of breath, now I'm so scared to death, but I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding anymore. For the first time in my life, I will stand my ground. No more running round. Here I am. What's a life covered up? Day and night, just not to fail. like a life without love is its own kind of jail. And what a waste to regret what I haven't tried yet. I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding anymore. For the first time in my life, I will stand my ground with my heart unbound. Here I am. Throw in the game just to make sure that I never win. Kept counting myself out again and again. So nervous, running in circles till nobody knew where I'd been. Well, maybe today is the day that I let it all in. Maybe my secret hurts no original sin. It's time, I've made up my mind. I'm ready to dive in. I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding anymore. For the first time in my life, I will stand my ground. I will